Hello, and welcome to my channel. I am Damien Marie AtHope. In the simplest terms, I am an atheist, humanist, philosopher, and prehistorical writer-researcher at DamienMarieAtHope.com. I am specifically an axiological atheist. An axiological atheism can be thought to involve ethical and value theory reasoned and moral argument driven apatheism, ignosticism, atheism, anti-theism, anti-religionism, secularism, and humanism. Axiological atheists can be understood as a value theory or a value science atheist. As an axiological atheism's ethically reasoned and constructive pro-humanity. I am an axiological thinker, value theorist. The science of goodness, worthiness, usefulness, valuableness, virtue, reliableness, accuracy, validity, morality, integrity, beneficialness, etc., etc. We axiologists have a value consciousness. And in general, we see the architecture of humanistic humanitarianism value in people that we see as dignity beings. Places and things are not. Axiology is a value theory. In its broadest sense, it involves areas of philosophy that are deemed to encompass some evaluative or evaluation aspect. Therefore, it crosses almost all domains in some way or another. Now for a more detailed terms as to what I am. I am an axiological atheist, an anti-theist, an anti-religionist, secularist, humanist, rationalist, writer, artist, poet, philosopher, advocate, activist with schooling in psychology, sociology, as well as I am an autodidact, self-taught in science, archaeology, anthropology, and philosophy. I promote science and am against pseudoscience, pseudo-history, pseudo-morality, things that are found in religion. I support realism, axiology, of course, liberty, justice, ethics. I am also an anarchist socialist. I support Anarchism and socialism, progressivism, liberalism, philosophy, psychology, archaeology, and anthropology, advocating for sexual, gender, child, secular, LGBTQIA+, race, class rights, and equality. So if you can guess from all that, I support or challenge that I have an eclectic variety of videos on a variety of topics. Please take time to check them out, as well as if you enjoy them, please give them a like. And don't forget to subscribe, as new things are on their way all the time for my channel.
Hi, this is Damien Marie AtHope, and I am an axiological atheist, and I'm here with a guest. Could you go ahead and tell us your name and a little bit about you?
Hi, Damien. It's lovely to see you again. My name's Louise Chamberlain, and I'm a survivor of childhood abuse and then subsequently domestic abuse. And the reason that I say subsequently is because I very much am a strong believer that being given poor tools to defend yourself, set boundaries, and understand toxic versus healthy behavior as a child definitely led me down the path of ending up as an adult victim also.
Can you start 1 second? I also relate to that. I was extremely abused as a child, and then I ended up in a marriage where my wife abused me. I wouldn't fight back, basically. I would, but she would punch me, and then I would, push her away or whatever. But I didn't, and I finally went to a counselor, so I'm sick of this. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And, but I'm just, so I understand that, because the reason I was saying that too is I feel like that I certainly physically could have beat her up.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to be an abuser. and I also didn't want to be abused. I was trying to say, though, is that, but I still ended up getting abused because of the same exact pattern you said. It wasn't because of a physical issue, it was a mental issue. I was used to being abused. People hitting me wasn't a crazy thought.
Yeah, that's it. And it's much as we wish that, you know, we all like to think that we're independent and that we're strong and we're making our own choices. But when you've been through childhood trauma, your choices are very much taken away from you. You feel like you're making choices, but every single decision that we made is made based on our beliefs and narratives. Everyone is. So if you went to buy a car, you'd choose a car brand based on what you've been told about those brands, what you knew about those brands. Like somebody might say that a German brand was better engineering than a French brand, or they might say that a French brand was prettier designed than a German brand. So that's something that you've been taught. So you walk into a dealership with that in your mind, and it's the same with relationships and with life. And if you've been set up to believe that you are something that you've been told you are, if you've been given the narrative that you are hysterical, you overreact, you are broken, wrong, wicked, a liar, because that's the things that abusers call you to erode yourself in order to continue controlling and abusing you, then you walk into life saying, well, no, I'm not those things and I'm not accepting this outwardly. But as soon as somebody touches that button, you crumble because you deep down believe it. And it's just exactly that. As soon as you walk into situations, there's a set of underlying beliefs and narratives that you take with you to whatever that situation is. And I haven't actually yet met a survivor of adult abuse, a domestic abuse survivor, you know, somebody that's been assaulted within their relationship or marriage that hasn't had a form of childhood trauma when we've got down to the root of it. And I've spoken to, as you know, Caroline Strawson's speaking at my event I'm going to talk a little bit more about later this year, and Gemma. I'm very good friends with a lady that she calls herself Liberation Helen on TikTok, and she's a psychotherapist. I talk to a lot of professionals in the field, and Women's Aid. Obviously, I work with Women's Aid, and we're so far haven't found a single survivor without, when we get to the bottom of it, you know, because people come into me and say, oh, actually, I know I've had a great childhood. I don't know what you're talking about, and I go, yeah, you know, that's great, and I absolutely respect anyone that believes that. But you know, there's a great article for anyone that's listening to this, and it's called, you can just easily Google it, it's called But We Took You to Stately Homes. And you literally just Google that sentence, But We Took You to Stately Homes. I'll give Damien a link to pop onto the thread. And it's literally about emotional abuse, because even if your parents haven't beat you and put you in an attic or, you know, sexually abused you or whatever else, you know, people have this demographic in their minds, don't they, of what an abusive family looks like. And a middle-class family that sends you to a grammar school, for example, like me, and takes you on holidays to, you know, Spain and France and places, you know, you're not gonna assume that's the thing. And it's that excuse. It's, well, we raised you, we fed you. It's that guilt trip. And actually, do you know what? Orphanages feed and clothe children. You know, your parents sign up for that when they start. You can't hold that over your children's head. You decided to make them, and you can't guilt them with it in order to choose to behave however you want towards them and abuse them. And it's very much a factor in, I don't know about you, but that whole, well, you should be grateful because you were under a roof and you were fed. You know.
My mom is dead, and my dad is mentally practically dead. He's got a lot of issues. He's had issues his whole life, but his schizophrenia is now becoming worse to where he was picked up walking in the street, talking to himself or something like that, and someone called, and so.
Oh.
But anyways, I've never really been close. They did all kinds of extreme abuse, of many kinds. But I agree with you but I think some people, when it comes to abuse, they only think of physical and not mental abuse. There's psychological abuse is brutal. I always try to keep people understand. It's not that, and there's the thing people don't get too. Physical abuse cannot not create psychological abuse.
100%.
So I feel like it's this false dichotomy. People like, well, physical abuse is psychological. It's all psychological. What are you talking about? Are you still experiencing the physical? No. Then it's psychological.
100%.
100%. So, but I think that the problem why I bring that up is because I think there's an evaluation that people are erring in. All hurt causes pain. Instead of trying to figure out who experienced more pain, you need to also understand that that's actually a fallacy, because let's just say you and me both experienced the same pain. But as you said, you had, say, support or not. I don't know. But let's just say you had some level of support higher than me. I felt I was alienated from my entire family and totally alone. I was left out to eat grass and dog food. So my level of, if I experience pain, would be worse because I already start so low.
Yes.
I wasn't even getting my basic needs met.
No.
Not shelter, not food, not so I was, I'm not going to go to my whole life, but I'm just saying,
yeah.
Because of, even if we experienced it, would it not be worse for someone who's already drowning if you put your finger on their head? Someone else, oh, it's just a finger. Yeah, if you're already drowning, that's all you needed was that little boom, and it's over.
Absolutely, I think definitely that's the case, because it all comes down to self-worth. Because if somebody treats you like a stray dog, that's what you see. You see that you feel unloved, you feel unworthy, and yes, you might be angry sometimes, but most of the time you get persuaded that you deserve that for some reason or other. And especially as a young person, I mean, this is one of the things, when you said about how physical abuse comes hand in hand. Abusers abuse anyone they can get in their power and vulnerable, and get them to stay within their little circle where they can't get out. And it's one of the things that we talk about in what I do with family court, because family courts often say, oh, well, he abused the mother, but he's still a good dad. He's an abuser. I'm not just saying men, by the way, but just in this particular example, with an abusive person, if the person and the general society's ideals of, well, he did this and this and this and this to the other parent, but we can send the children there unsupervised. It just doesn't make any sense, because that person has those character traits, and that person will, and as you say, young people are very much more vulnerable, because that's all you've known. That's what you see as love, and that's what you see as, even if you say to yourself that they don't love me, they don't treat me right, that's all you know. So what else have you got to frame the world in? What other lens have you got to look through? Yeah.
And one more point I want to make about it too is that people don't realize that you are being abused. When you see abuse, even if it's not happening to you, most people are not robots. They are empathetic beings. And when we see people, any people, not even related, like you said, their other parent, which is someone, a caregiver, the most important in their entire life is being harmed or threatened, and you think that does not cause the child psychological harm, you're 100%. Crazy. Of course it does.
Absolutely. You've heard of Patrick Stewart from Star Trek. Starship Enterprise, yeah. He's spoken out about being a childhood. His father abused his mum, and he's still at the age of, I think he's 60 odd now. I think he might be a bit older, but he's around that age. He's spoken out about how he's had therapy. He goes to therapy twice a week, and he has done since he got the job on the TV, since he could afford it. And he still goes because he still can hear the screams of his mum still. And I know that's a random example of a celebrity, but the reason that I'm using that high profile case is because, unfortunately, sometimes it takes somebody that's got a high profile saying it for anybody to listen. And
or to take it as serious, because I think, like, because you're going back to what you're saying, it's hysterical. A lot of people are like, oh, you're blowing it out of proportion. But the problem is that we've accepted a society that starts at the level of psychopath. And then so anything that feels any emotions, oh, it's terrible, because it's off the psychopath ideal. Because the ideal is that you show no emotions. Because if you ever see people, this is why I'm making this point. I don't know about England, but in America, like, say even in TV, you'll have someone say this. They'll say, oh, I feel bad because someone did something. They're not talking about a person doing it currently. It's always about the past. We're constantly experiencing the world and then re-experiencing it every time we think about it.
Yes.
And so that's what I mean is that we have this disconnect of thinking somehow that ideas don't have feelings, or that somehow feelings that we have towards ideas can't affect us. All of it does.
Yeah.
Just like you were saying about someone seeing themselves as a victim or not a victim or a survivor. Those words can have labels that could be nothing, but a lot of times we attach things to them. What I think is odd, like to say about how society does stuff. Society is more accepting in America. I don't know about everywhere else, but in America, for women to have sexual abuse, people will generally offer care. Now they also will attack them and say they didn't happen. But I'm just saying, if a male says, that's treated generally totally different. Just like if you said as a female, you have in the workplace been sexually harassed, people treat you different. If I, perceived as a male, say that I was sexually harassed in the workplace, they're like, oh yeah, well whatever, you know. They somehow like, it's all serious. I think that's what I'm saying. Is society, like you said, gives us these fake values, and so then we don't live up to these values. They were always fake.
Absolutely. I think that a lot of that comes down to the perception of what a real man is. And I think that, you know, one of the reasons that the work that I do and the education programs that me and the Valkyries, as we call ourselves, part of the Clear Path, which I'll talk about a little bit later on. But what we want to do is we're starting, obviously I'm here in the UK, as you can probably tell from my accent for anyone listening, but we want to make this global. I've got one of my speakers is from Vancouver, Sarah Tomlinson. We've got a speaker from South Africa, and we very much want this to spread globally, but we're starting here because that's where I live. And I very much, there's a huge pressure on young boys, and all of it stems down to what is valued in society. Right. And it is that a man that is tough and forthright and assertive and can go out and get what he wants out of life and doesn't show emotion is seen as strong and good and valued. And that actually shows that females are less valued. It just basically from that narrative, because the second that you cry in a board meeting, or the second that you show emotion, because, you know, women do express themselves, not everybody, but generally we're not allowed to be in touch with our femininity without being literally labelled. It's basically back to witch hunting and hysteria in the Victorian times, being diagnosed with hysteria. And it's toxic masculinity. Young boys being brought up to believe that to get their own way in life, they have to stomp on everybody else. And those young boys have no one to talk to. And I think that's one of the reasons that unhealthy minded men, which is unfortunately a big group now. I think it's very much a virus that no one has really paid any attention to, and it's got ridiculous now. But they choose women that can mother them, because they need that nurture from somewhere, and they don't get it from their friend groups, they don't get it at work, they don't get it in their social settings or from the media. And so they put these women on pedestals. They put us on these pedestals as if we're the answer, as if we're going to fix all their problems by giving them cuddles and talking to them. And when they find that we're not the answer, and they still have this deep pit in their stomach because they don't know how to helpfully regulate their emotions, suddenly we're the target of their anger, because we missold ourselves. We're liars, we're manipulators, but we never advertised ourselves to be this magic wand for them in the first place. And if boys could only, this is one of the education programs that we want to put in, because it's not okay that children leave school being able to identify an isosceles triangle, but not able to identify when they're feeling angry or sad. And yes, we don't want nanny states. We don't want everything to be taken off the parents and schools to have everything. But if you look at the statistics, if you look at the research, there is a huge proportion of parents, I think it's over 50% of parents don't know how to give that emotional nurture, and they don't know how to give children those tools. So if we're going to fix this, it needs to start young. And there's the other thing, the other research that's been done recently.
I think that coincides with that. I also believe that because that goes back to the school is more than just teaching one kind of thing. Because if school is about teaching, there is certainly teaching good behavior or ethics or social appropriateness or whatever, or even as you said, I think that we treat counseling as if it's only for when we are doing our worst, when really we should be getting counseling so that we can become our best.
100%, like literally couldn't agree more. We were talking about this literally last night with a friend who's also a survivor, and I said the only time that there isn't enough of it either, but the only time when it's acceptable to reach out for mental health support, or when any services come in to catch people at the bottom of the net, is when we're at crisis point.
Right,
as soon as we're not suicidal anymore, or we're not literally trying to stab people in the street, or what, stupid examples, but then they just
they're not. Don't say stupid, because I mean it's not like they're good examples. You're just meaning they're limited. That's a difference. I mean, stupid would be like if you said, "Well, the moon is a hologram." That's stupid.
Yeah, that is definitely stupid.
So
you're right.
I'm talking about mislabeling. I'm just saying you're meaning mislabeling. You're taking society and making it extreme against what you said. And what you said was reasonable. It was limited.
Good point. This is the thing. So even me, even though I've gone on this huge empowerment journey, I still catch you've just caught me doing it. So I'm like sat here with my egg on my face, because like literally we still minimize something. If we can see somebody coming in with a critique, we immediately belittle it so that no one else can do it to us. And it's like, oh, I'm still working on that sometimes. But yeah, and it's like, so what we want to do is we want to instill, we've got like Yes Matters, which is Gemma Aitchison who's speaking. She runs a program called Yes Matters, and it's all about consent, which isn't just about consent, but there's the freedom course as well from Women's Aid. So what we want to do, what we've written, is a combination of those two things. And it's and another thing, which is mindfulness, because what we believe is that in schools, yes, children need a basic level of education in maths and English and whatever subjects they want to have, but then where is, I know that in the 50s home economics was not an ideal topic because it was very sexist, etc. But there needs to be some form of learning how to navigate the real world. Young children walk out of school, or they're still in school when they have their first romantic relationships, and something like a huge 80% of those are not healthy ones. There's pushing boundaries in terms of consent. There is bullying and coercion and all of that. And what I've discovered through a lot of my reading and the research and the psychologists that I've met is actually that because. So we're all as a society, like you say, crisis point management, and it's all reactive. None of it's proactive. None of it's trying to stop the stem. And as Desmond Tutu said, we need to stop pulling people out of the water, and we need to start going upstream and finding out why they're falling in. So this is my theory, and this is what the women that I'm working with, and the men that I'm working with, and the team that I've put together we're going to instill this, and we're going to pilot it here in the UK. It's going to happen because I'm pushing for it, and I refuse to not let it happen. And what we want is, the reason is because at the moment we've got rape crisis, Damien, we've got domestic abuse crisis, we've got child abuse crisis, we've got all these amazing organisations and charities that are picking people up at crisis point, but there isn't a robust state-run support structure for that, and also whatever is there is just lacking in resources and is not acceptable. 4,800 women were turned away from refuges in the UK last year because there just weren't enough. 70% of them were with children, and lots of them are still with their abuser. They were sent home to their abuser even though they'd packed a bag and dared to leave. And that's not acceptable.
Yeah, I've donated to women's shelters.
What I thought was, when I came up with Clear Path for the conference and the movement, is that actually we're all supporting victims and we're pulling people out of the water, but there's one cause of this, and the majority cause of it is narcissistic abuse. Now there is other forms, there's psychopaths and there's sociopaths, and there are different forms of mental health issues, and there are different forms of abusers. But statistically, it does fall under the umbrella of NPD, narcissistic personality disorder, which is a huge and prevalent thing that's sort of grown and been passed down from generation to generation, and it has spread like a virus. And I thought, you know what we all need to be doing? instead of standing here to get like individually picking people out and fixing them after it's happened, we need to start trying to look at why this is happening and where we can stem the flow, because it's just not manageable. There's no resources that can fix this. So,
well, speaking of when you said sociopath, I'm a high-functioning sociopath due to extreme child abuse.
yeah.
I have extreme child abuse, starvation, like I said, all kinds of things. But so, and my tailbone was broken. My dad hit me with a 2x4.
Oh.
Big piece of wood. Anyways, but so I'm just to say is that I know a little bit about sociopaths besides having a psychology degree. That sociopaths tend to be about, I think it's 40% have had extreme child abuse.
Yes.
And then psychopaths, it's only 10%.
Yes.
So it shows that sociopath is more a condition, probably from. I see mine, at least what it feels like, is more like a PTSD.
Yes.
It's like I'm real reactive violently. So if you do anything, I perceive it as violent threat to me, and I act violently, sort of.
Yeah, it's a base response. It's fight, flight, freeze, or fall.
Exactly.
And you don't get to choose what that response is, because it's an instinctual one. Your cognitive brain can't decide for you, because you're surviving. You're getting away from a tiger. You haven't got a chance to survey the land and check it out. You react, and it's very much an animalistic reaction. And also one of those things with sociopathy is the defense mechanism, because you've had to care so much. You've had to be hyper aware of the people around you's emotions, their slightest facial expression changes, their breathing, the way
I can read people very good,
the way they walk. So you can hear, if you know, once you've been an abuse victim, you can hear a different, if they're walking up the drive, you can hear the way their footsteps are, and you know either you're in for it or you're not in for it right there and then. And it's like, and there's the slow build up and the cycles. But what I wanted to do was this, and what I've found out is that, so for example, narcissism, which you can get narcissistic psychopaths, you can get narcissistic sociopaths.
I think that narcissists have it extreme, psychopaths and sociopaths also. That's what I would say. It's a tendency. I like, people always ask me, do I have any doubt? I have zero doubt.
No.
You don't ever feel like, doubt about yourself? Never.
No.
I don't feel that. Because no one's opinion matters. So if your opinion, or people, as long as when I doubt me, that's different.
Yes.
And so, but that's how now I have a value structure where I care about how I act and how I behave.
Yes.
And so I behave a lot more healthy because I've chosen to. And
because you taught, that self-taught.
Yeah, because I had to say, it's because that's not for you. That's for me. It was hard to. Everyone's like, oh, it hurts other people. That's harder for me to grasp than it hurts me. Yeah. And I realized I want to be a certain kind of person that I could look up to. Someone I would go, I want to be like him, or whatever. So I said, I just decided that's who I'm going to be, and then I forced myself to be that.
Yeah, that's the difference between towards and away from goals, isn't it? It's absolutely all that, yeah.
Oh, and it went 20 years of counseling, so people don't think that I ain't saying that somehow miraculously I went, hey, I want to.
I'm going to change my entire thought process and the makeup that it happens and the underlying narrative.
Yeah.
I know, I'm the same. I've had to reprogram myself, and one of the reasons that I founded Clear Path is because I wasn't able to access in the UK. It's just not as normally. There aren't as many psychologists. There aren't as many. You can't just get a therapy session. And on the NHS, it's a 2-year waiting list to get mental health support. There aren't work programs where you can just sign up and get counselling within work and things. And I'm not saying that it's amazing in America, but there's definitely more. But there's definitely a little bit more acceptance of just going to a therapist, whereas in England it's stiff up a lip, sweep it under the carpet and jog on. Terrible. Very unhealthy attitude as a nation.
Very unhealthy, I agree.
Yeah, but basically, if you are looking at narcissists specifically, and you look at a narcissist trying to go into therapy, because it's very rare, as you know, because obviously
I heard a statistic that said when I was in school for psychology that narcissists are generally the only people you almost cannot help.
Yes.
The only hope for them, that's the one thing I read. So I don't know, but just what I read. But it said something like the only hope for them is to put them in group counseling and force them to only talk about everyone else's feelings the whole time.
Yes, forced empathy. Yeah, but the funny thing is, that's true once a narcissist reaches the age of 25. But prior to that, there is a lot more percentage of success if they enter into proper intensive therapy. And then I looked into it a little bit deeper, and it's really, really interesting because, you look at CBT for somebody with PTSD like myself, and it's a 7-step
behavioral therapy out.
Yeah, and it's a 7-step program, isn't it, to finding your self-love, your boundaries, you change your inner voice because it's the voice of your abusers, and you separate it out and all that. And you go through these
I don't remember, but okay.
Yeah, and you go through your 7 stages, right? And then I looked at what the stages are for narcissistic recovery on the therapy programs, and you'll be able to find this out as well. And it's very similar. It's almost exactly the same program, because what do narcissists lack? Self-love. They are deeply insecure and self-loathing, right, despite obviously feeling like they're always right and everything, because that's a very thick defense mechanism and learned behavior. And they've learned that way of coercing other people to get their own way, to feed that hole inside themselves. And what empaths and codependents do is they fill that hole inside themselves by being of value to other people and being kind and overly exerting themselves into other people's lives and not doing anything for themselves and causing themselves damage. And it's interesting, because what we want to put into schools is literally just simple mindfulness tools for children, and also interpersonal relationship teaching, like as in teaching them the red flags when they're young, and they'll accept the information before they've got all those narratives solidly in there.
I definitely think that counseling and teaching people about themselves is extremely healthy. It's like it reminds me of like in America, the gun debate, and I'm not even going to talk about it, but my point is the gun debate, right? And there's a statement that the people that support the guns say that it's mental health that causes the gun violence, which is odd, because if it's mental health, why is it not mental health exactly amount of gun violence in the UK, in Africa, in India, in Asia, in Russia, whatever? I mean, it's shit. If it was a mental health issue and not a somehow a society issue of some other source, it cannot be mental health, because if it was, it would be universal. You can't be limited to the United States. What the United States is about different people.
Absolutely true. It's funny, isn't it? Because I think Western society has unfortunately built itself off of squishing other people. And so narcissistic people rise to the top in businesses and in governments and things very quickly as well, because that's the way it's built.
Psychopaths, then sociopaths too. Yes, absolutely.
It's built for success. Yeah, I'll stand on your head, and I'll stand on your head, and unfortunately, and that's one of the reasons I think that the abusive behaviour is such a hard back to break, because actually we are taught that that's something of value. We do sports day, we pit children against each other in competitions, and there's always the one kid that's super sporty, that gets loads of awards and gets praised by the teachers, but actually treats the other kids like pieces of shit, right? And you're like, that's valued. That is valued in our society. So there's no wonder that narcissists can tell themselves over and over again that they're a good person, because actually in media, in teenage TV shows, in dramas, in movies, it's like, yeah, okay, well, the bad guy wins. Right?
That's a very interesting point that you just said right there, that I actually had never thought of.
Oh.
That why that they may have a justification, wrongly, but a pseudo justification for their thing, because I would thought their justification's wrong.
Yeah, it's wrong.
Damn wrong. But then you said that, and I thought, if you looked at society and you bought it all, I don't buy it. I'm an anarchist. No. I don't buy all that. So,
same.
Like their values, like, oh, dude, your values are no.
Yes.
So yeah, but I never thought about it. That's true. If you're already buying it, then because like I was saying, I know that like this one thing said, oh, this article, like it was a good thing. They're like, I can't remember what it said, but it's like all the top managers are psychopaths. Maybe we should be more uncaring. And I thought, no, you're just saying that the most vicious people can make it to the top. Yeah. Doesn't mean that we all should follow that model.
Absolutely. I remember when I finished uni, I went to work at a bank, a bank in England, big famous bank, and I worked there, and I was it didn't naturally sit. I mean, I was brought up to literally pay attention to everybody else's feelings because I was like wrong and everything. So it didn't always sit with me, the whole target-driven, beating other people to the customer, pretending someone was on break so you could get to see that person and sell them that loan, none of that stuff. And also I used to really spend a lot of time with the customers that had got in debt and help them out of it and stuff. And I remember somebody got promoted above me, and I said to my manager, I was like, there's no better, she doesn't get better targets than me, she doesn't get better sales, but she's not nice to people. And my manager said to me, you've got to harden up. And she said to me, and it was actually something that I've heard a lot since then, and she said, people that want to get somewhere in life have to learn to take what they want. And I've heard that in programs and in media. Since I heard it, it stuck with me. It's a bit
Hello, and welcome to my channel. I am Damien Marie AtHope. In the simplest terms, I am an atheist, humanist, philosopher, and prehistorical writer-researcher at DamienMarieAtHope.com. I am specifically an axiological atheist. An axiological atheism can be thought to involve ethical and value theory reasoned and moral argument driven apatheism, Ignosticism, Atheism, Anti-theism, Anti-religionism, Secularism, and Humanism. Axiological atheists can be understood as a value theory or a value science atheist. As an axiological atheism's ethically reasoned and constructive pro-humanity. I am an axiological thinker, value theorist. The science of goodness, worthiness, usefulness, valuableness, virtue, reliableness, accuracy, validity, morality, integrity, beneficialness, etc., etc. We axiologists have a value consciousness. And in general, we see the architecture of humanistic humanitarianism value in people that we see as dignity beings. Places and things are not. Axiology is a value theory. In its broadest sense, it involves areas of philosophy that are deemed to encompass some evaluative or evaluation aspect. Therefore, it crosses almost all domains in some way or another. Now for a more detailed terms as to what I am. I am an axiological atheist, an anti-theist, an anti-religionist, secularist, humanist, rationalist, writer, artist, poet, philosopher, advocate, activist, with schooling in psychology, sociology, as well as I am an autodidact, self-taught in science, archaeology, anthropology, and philosophy. I promote science and am against pseudoscience, pseudo-history, pseudo-morality, things that are found in religion. I support realism, axiology, of course, liberty, justice, ethics. I am also an anarchist socialist. I support anarchism and socialism, progressivism, liberalism, philosophy, psychology, archaeology, and anthropology, advocating for sexual, gender, child, secular, LGBTQIA+, race, class rights, and equality. So if you can guess from all that, I support or challenge that I have an eclectic variety of videos on a variety of topics. Please take time to check them out, as well as if you enjoy them, please give them a like. And don't forget to subscribe, as new things are on their way all the time for my channel.